Welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 83. I'm your host, Subasa J. Wida, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, we're going to be doing part 2 of our Rosetta Limited review. We're going to be talking about the Runeblade cards, the Wizard cards, and the generic cards that we didn't get to last week. And we'll be finishing off the set. Not every card has been spoiled yet, so there are going to be cards we won't be talking about in this episode. But after the world premiere, we will have the full list and the legendaries as well, so we'll go into more details about those after those get released. But before we do that, how was your week, Yuki?
My week's been pretty good. So I left on the Friday to go to Dallas, just spending some time with my girlfriend before going to Tampa for the world premiere, which is coming up. That's very exciting. For the world premiere, I've been doing a little bit of limited prep by kind of like building out each hero with commons and rares of what they might look like. I say might because, as Jay mentioned, we are missing some commons and rares, so it's not fully complete. And I also haven't really played with the cards, so who knows? I'm probably missing at least some things, but I think it's a pretty good starting point. And if that's something that interests you, you're going to Tampa, you want to kind of get a leg up on the competition, that's all posted up on Patreon. So I have the kind of like my like quote unquote ideal draft deck for each hero posted, at least for now, as well as just like a few general notes about the different card pools and things that I noticed as I was putting it together, like certain things go well in one class or just kind of like generalizations about the Earth, Wizard, Lightning, and Runeblade cards. So you can check that out over on Patreon. And then other than that, I played a Living Legend skirmish. I brought Lexi. That Lexi deck was exactly the kind of Ice Lexi deck that I posted over on Patreon. I made semifinals. I was 4-0 in Swiss, and then I lost to Brody. It turns out Zen is still very good in Living Legend. I got him to block 2 cards on a Frostlock, and then I had fused with a Channel Bleak Expanse, and I'm like, he's already given me 2 cards. I'm just going to go Tunic CNC. And then he blocks with his headpiece and his boots, takes 3, loses his arsenal. So now he's down to 2 cards, and then he gets the Chi and the Tiger in hand. And he just cracks stubbies, plays Shifting Winds, goes Tiger Bonds like 5 times, and then like ends on 100 wins. And I think he did 22 damage off of like essentially a 2-card hand with 3 equipment. Pretty good.
That sounds like Zen in a nutshell.
Yeah, it was so gross. I was just like, surely taking 3 cards is enough. I'll save the Channel Bleak, and then I'll have his Traverse won't work when my Channel Bleak's out, and like maybe that's enough time to win the game or get him really low. And it's like, no, no, it's not.
I guess the same news about Zen. Zen's actually already LL'd from Blitz. I just found out like a couple of days ago that this is even a thing that he can LL already.
Yep, he allowed in 2 weeks in Blitz. So I guess I don't know if I want to say that Blitz is healthy, but I don't know that much about the format. But Blitz is at least free of Zen. I think Dash and Briar also LL. They were pretty close, and I think there's like 2,000 something Living Legend points for this skirmish season alone. So we might even see a few other heroes LL. Like I think like Dory is like a couple points away. So lots of heroes rotating out of Blitz. Blitz also just has a lot of heroes. Like some of it's that they have like the TCC heroes like Reverent and stuff, but they also just like I think there's like 40 heroes they call in that format or something. It's a very large number.
Yeah. I guess that's also the reason why they like pumped up the amount of points each hero gets for the skirmish seasons, and it's probably also because like there's not that many events in general that can give points to these blitz heroes, so
Yeah, it's mostly skirmish at this point.
yeah, so then that's basically going to determine the meta for what stays and what doesn't, because like if I'm correct on this, Blaze got a bunch of points this in 2 weeks as well, and not many people have access to that card.
Yeah, that does make sense. From what I understand, Blaze is not as good as Zen, but still a very good hero in Blitz. Turns out Storm Striders in a 20 life format is kind of messed up. Who would have thought?
Yeah, Storm Shredders usually does like 15 to 20 damage, so yeah, 20 life means they're dead.
Yeah, when you're not Kino, it's like a little bit tougher, kind of. But then like Blaze does get to play instance, so like as long as she's opted a bit, she can be like, I don't know, remove 4 counters, Red Emeritus Scalding, Striders, Red Emeritus Scalding, here's 12 Arcane, Waning Moon you for 3, and it's like, oh, okay, sure.
That's fair, I
It,
guess.
it just seems reasonable, 17 Arcane on your turn in this 20 life format. It just seems like a thing this format needs.
I guess one more thing is that because we're getting more wizard cards in this next set, Blaze gets even stronger. Like I haven't even played against Blaze yet, and I feel like she's gonna LL before I even get to play a single game against her at this point. If I like, locally, I don't think anyone plays Blaze in our area, so it's very likely by the next skirmish season she's out of here, right?
Yeah, probably. I guess some people have the hero now because some people won skirmishes, so they should theoretically have the hero. I don't know if they're keeping it or not, but yeah, they theoretically a few people should have access to it. Yeah. Did you get up to anything this weekend? Was there any skirmishes in Vancouver, or was that pretty much all it on the first week?
I didn't really check, but at least I didn't go. I ended up doing like a barbecue with my friends and chilling mostly.
Yeah. It is kind of like a pretty relaxed down season right now for a lot of people, and yeah, it's a good time to do other non-flesh and blood things. But new set coming up, and honestly, I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, for myself, I've been working with like one of my friends' YouTube channel, and we've been filming a good amount. So I don't know when they're gonna be posting that video, but they're trying new stuff. So hopefully that goes well, and it'll be pretty fun. And I've been mainly using my time on that during my weekends now. So okay, let's start talking about the rune blades and the wizard cards for this episode. Last week we left off at the last card was like Sigil Lightning being a lightning card, and we'll just go from there. So same as last week, if you guys do want to follow along, if you want to go to february.net, you can click on the spoilers tab and go down to about the middle of the page where Runeblade starts. And if you want to follow along with from there, that'll be the best way to follow along. So same as last week, we're only going to be talking about the commons and rares today. Okay, we're going to get right into it. We're going to start with the first card on our list today. It's going to be Bloodtorn Bodus. Is that how I pronounce this card?
I don't actually know. It sounds fun to me. I'm not sure about this one.
Okay, that's fair. This is a Runeblade equipment, and it is a chess piece, and it blocks for 0. Its ability is action, destroy this, and an aura you control. Gain a resource. Go again. What do you think about this card, Yuki?
I think this chess piece is very good in general. I think in particular in Florian, it's really impressive. Aurora seems a little bit harder to make use of this. You're just like not making quite as many auras, and usually making your embodiment of lightning into a resource isn't great. I guess there's scenarios where you could maybe end up with like 2 embodiments of lightning occasionally, and transferring one into a resource is still like pretty good. But I think overall this chess piece has been like pretty impressive to me. There's some auras that have like the sigils, for example, have effects when they leave. So you can play a sigil, use your Blood Torrent Bodus, and then get your resource and the effect of the sigil right away, for example. And there's a few other auras we'll see in the Runeblade card pool that also care about this. So I think overall this card's been pretty good. I think if you're a Runeblade, you probably want this. If you're Aurora, maybe you can get away with like one of the generic chess pieces, probably pretty close. But in Florian, I think this is really, really good.
That's fair. I guess there's also some like synergy with some of the channel cards. Those are gonna be majestics, but like if you know they're gonna go away, there might be a good reason to just like cash that into the bonus before they leave naturally.
Yeah, potentially. That's true. Like Lightning Valley only triggers start of your turn, so yeah. I think overall this chess piece is like pretty good. Like it's probably not as powerful as something like Sash of Sandakai from Uprising, Outsiders, Uprising, but it's still very good. And There are kind of like niche scenarios where I think it might even be better. We'll come back to this chess piece, I think, as we're discussing a few of the other cards, and you'll start to see some of the synergies. Because I think on its own it reads like kind of okay, and then as you see the rest of the card pool, you're like, okay, this does have some like applications or specific cards where it pairs very, very nicely with.
Okay, that makes sense. Then we'll move right on and talk about Runehold Release. This is a Runeblade arms equipment, and its ability is action, destroy this, create a rune chant token, go again. And this also blocks for 0.
Yeah. So already, if you have the Runehold release and you have the chess piece, you can if you want to make a rune chant, make the rune chant into a resource. You're spending 2 equipment for a resource, which is not like the most impressive thing we've ever seen, but it's still pretty good. Just like being able to make a resource on demand if you really need it is really good. And then, you know, being able to have 1 damage that's very almost impossible to reliably block is very, very good. So yeah, I think this arms piece is fantastic, and in particular in Florian, once his ability is online, making 2 rune chants is pretty big game.
Yeah, I think that makes all sense. A question here is, do you think the block value of 0 on these cards will matter in this format?
I think it is okay. So as far as I know, there isn't in the glove spot specifically, is there's not any competition that we've seen. There might be, like, it's possible we see another gloves somewhere, like maybe there's a generic gloves we haven't seen, but of the card pool we've seen, there actually isn't another gloves that you would like clearly rather have. In the chess piece there is something that prevents the damage, and there's like an argument there, and I think in like Aurora, especially for the chess piece, you might just want the 1 life, but in the gloves there's currently not really anything competing with it, so Runehold release is just like easily the best. But I suspect we're probably missing some equipment somewhere, and I don't know. We can evaluate it when we have the full set, I guess.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, then let's talk about our first rare for Rune Blades. This is gonna be Splintering Deadwood. This is for a red. It costs 3, attacks for 7, blocks for 3, and it says when this attacks or hits, you may destroy an aura you control. If you do, create a rune chant token. So this card triggers twice, right? So this card triggers when it attacks and when it hits. I'm reading that correctly, right?
Yes, that's right. It potentially triggers twice, and notably, if you are Florian and you trigger this, you can like destroy a rune chant and get 2 rune chants. So you're like kind of up a point of value. So I do think that that's very, very good. When you attack with it, though, you won't be able to destroy the rune chant because the rune chants trigger when you play the attack action card. And so by the time this is attacking, so like you play the attack action card, the rune chants go in the stack, the rune chants will deal their damage, and then this is attacking and you get the attack trigger, and there's no rune chants to destroy. So on attack trigger, you need some other aura to sacrifice to this. Say like an embodiment of Earth, for example, if you happen to have it. And then you can do that. And then the on hit, maybe if you use the first sacrifice and you sacrifice something, got a rune chant, you could then sacrifice one of your rune chants that's laying around to get the second trigger if it hits.
I guess this means that this does require quite a bit of setup for Florian. I guess this is a little bit easier to set up with, sorry, what's her name?
Aurora.
With Aurora, because she can technically activate her ability after the trigger of like the embodiment of lightning would trigger, and while this card is attacking. Is that correct?
Yeah, you should technically be able to do that. You should be able to respond to the trigger by making an embodiment. It is a little tricky because you probably need 2 blues for that hand, like a blue to play this, then 2 resources to make the embodiment, and you have to have a lightning card you played before this. So it is possible. It's a little tricky. I'm not sure how good making an embodiment of lightning into a rune chant is, though. So I'm not sure about this card. It has a good stat line, so I think like for the stat line alone, it's already pretty reasonable. But the effect is like This feels like a bit more like a constructed effect. Like this in Viscerai on a Mordred tide turn, yeah, that's really good because like the Viscerai trigger, you can just sacrifice it. But in limited, it seems a little hard to make sense or to make use of rather. Sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense. It would be kind of cool to be able to like build around this card. So it might become a build around rare in the set. Because if you are Florian and you have like multiple splintering deadwoods, and if you consistently make like 3 rune chants with this card, that would be pretty strong.
Yeah, I guess the cards that it does synergize with is like the sigils and there's one other Runeblade Aura we've seen so far that it does synergize with. So there are cards that can make this work, and if you like play your sigil, you get the effect and you get 2 rune chants out of the deal. That is pretty good, and then if it hits, you get a 3rd rune chant. I could see that being pretty powerful. So I guess if you have sigils in your deck, this is probably like pretty powerful, especially when Florian's online. But I think largely this will be a 3 for 7 Runeblade attack action, which is still pretty good.
Blocking for 3 is good, attacking for 7 is good. Then let's move on to our next card, which is going to be Vantage Point. It's a Runeblade action attack. It costs 3, attacks for 7 again, and blocks for 3. It reads, if you played or created an aura this turn, it gets Overpower. And Overpower is the one that can't be defended by more than one action card.
I think this card's really good. I think I overall like this a little bit more than Splintering Deadwood. I think a Splintering Deadwood in the right deck is very impactful, but Vantage Point is just like easier to turn on. Your gloves Runehold release, if you have them, can just turn this on, and being able to be like towards the end of the game, make 2 rune chants, assuming Florian's online, 7 overpower off your 2 card hand is like a lot of reach. A lot of reach. That can just kill people out of nowhere. So I think this card is really, really good.
There seems to be like this like trend in this set of like unblockable damage. So do you think this format's gonna be like a lot of like, can I kill you fast enough, rather than like some of the other formats where it was like usually came down to fatigue?
Yeah, my initial read on the format is that the lightning decks are the aggressive decks of the format that can really kind of like go wide and do a lot of damage, and then the earth heroes are the more controlling decks that, like both because they want to get their hero power online, which requires them to get cards in graveyard and play two decompose cards like we talked about last week, but also because they have life gain as a theme within them to kind of enable that game plan. So I think that there's like a push and pull of, you have these aggro decks trying to end the game very quickly, then you have these like, honestly, the earth decks can gain a lot of life, and I think that that's pretty relevant to mitigating this. And the lightning decks do have, there's a lightning common that you can discard to prevent 2 damage, so there are always ways to get around this a little bit. And just because you're like, oh, I have Exaxes with this evasive damage, if they can't stop any of it, it's like, is not a for sure thing against any of the heroes in the set, so do be a little careful of that. But yes, you definitely can just kill people, and the evasive damage at the end of the game does seem really, really real to me.
Then we're gonna be talking about the next rare. So this one's a Runeblade action. It costs 1 and blocks for 3. It's called Condemned to Slaughter. And this card reads, your next Runeblade attack this turn gets +3. You may destroy an aura you control. If you do, each opponent destroys an aura permanent they control. Go again.
Yeah, and it blocks for 3. So this is Come to Fight. That is a Runeblade card. And then it has the additional rider of you can destroy an aura you control and destroy an opponent's aura you control, which is just upside because it's a May. You don't have to do it. Yeah, I think this card's pretty decent. Block 3 that can go wide or extend your hand. Because like there is like a fair bit of arcane damage in the set, especially with the wizards, and sometimes you just like don't get to block, and in that case having like a 3 go again that you can use to spend more cards in hand seems pretty good. And if you, I can imagine spots where destroying their aura would be pretty good. I think like the embodiment of lightning in particular seems really good to destroy, but maybe embodiment of earth too if you're giving something +3 and going really tall if they have it.
That's fair. I think Condemned to Slaughter says next Runeblade attack, so it works with the weapons. It basically means that in Florian, this is a guaranteed 2 cost for 5, or in Aurora, it's a 2 cost for 4.
Three cost 5 in Florian, yeah.
Oh, 3 cost for 5, sorry. So I think this card is going to be decent because it's like,
Yeah.
it does have Go Again for Florian, and it's like Florian really needs Go Again at this point from like all the cards we've been reading so far. It's like a good way to have the Go Again and just like guaranteed damage, and is the three block as well. I feel like this card's fine, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's very comparable to Come to Fight.
Okay, yeah, it's and I think the best part about Come to Fight was it was a block, three block, and Condemned to Slaughter, same thing. It's a three block. I think this card being a three block with Go Again that is like versatile wherever you play it is gonna make this card kind of like a glue card for Florian to be like pretty powerful.
Yeah, it just sort of like lets you block when you want to block, which you kind of do because we talked about being like a little more slow and controlly. But if for some reason you can't or you're left with extra cards, you can always convert this. And I think having that flexibility where it blocks really well, but it also lets you spend your whole hand is just pretty good. That's something that you want out of a card.
I guess this is the first card we've seen that's an action card that blocks for three for the embodiment of Earths, right?
Yeah, for Runeblades, yeah. So this would be a 4 block if you have an embodiment of Earth.
Okay, I think you know what this card seems good. Like
Yeah, I think it's solid.
I think it's like nothing is like exceptionally good, but like there's only good parts about this card, I think.
hmm I think it does have some synergy with some of the other cards in the set. So next up, we have Malefic Incantation. This is a 0 cost 2 block Runeblade action aura. And at red, it says, Go again. This enters the arena with 3 verse counters. When it has none, destroy it. And once per turn, when you play an attack action card, remove a verse counter from this. If you do, create a rune chant token. The yellow and blue versions start with 2 and 1 verse counters, respectively. And this card is good if the game goes long enough and you swing enough attack action cards to keep getting the rune chance out of it. Notably, it is an aura itself, so you could potentially get like 1 or 2 rune chance out of this and then sacrifice it to Condemn to Slaughter and destroy an opposing aura, or sacrifice it to the first card we talked about, Splintering Deadwood, and get some rune chance. So there is some synergy there. It being a 2 block, though, and specifically requiring an attack action card, makes me wonder if this is like good in the Earth matchups and maybe a little slow in the Lightning matchups. I'm not exactly sure what the speed of the format is, but I think that like especially if you have like multiples of these, it might be like hard to make use of them is sort of like my initial thoughts, but I think it's powerful if you do get the verse counters off of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does synergize with some of the other cards though, so I could see like certain decks really wanting this effect if you have a lot of the like caring about creating auras or caring about destroying auras. I could see this being very good.
Yeah, I think the problem that I can see with it so far is that we keep on reading some cards that gets to destroy your opponent's auras, and if they destroy it while they have maybe like 2 verse counters on this card, it is pretty detrimental, right?
I do agree with that. And it's just like a little slow. I would like this card a lot more if this worked with the weapon. Like if you could like play this and then swing Rotwood Reaper and get a rune chant out of it right away and it turns on the weapon, I would like this card a lot. But because you can't, it's sort of like if you want to get value out of it right away, it's like already probably a 3 card hand. I'm assuming Florian's the one that wants this more because like rune chants and he doubles them up once it gets going. Yeah, keeping a 3 card hand for setup is like it's a lot. I
Mm.
think there's like other rune champ payoffs that are like a little bit more direct, and I think I like them more. But I don't know. Don't write this card off. It just strikes me as maybe a little bit slow. In limited, anyways. I think in classic constructed you have like more time, and this is probably really solid. But in limited, it strikes me as like maybe just a little slow.
That's fair. That's fair. I guess one note would be that this is an aura itself. So if you play
hmm
this and attack with the Reaper, you don't get the rune chant from this card, but then the Reaper will get its power buff on its own.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess when I say it doesn't work with the weapon, it's like not entirely true. It kind of does, but I wish you got the rune chant from the Rotwood Reaper, basically.
Yeah, I understand.
Because then you could just like swing Rotwood Reaper. This would trigger. You would get the +2, and like that would be really good. But that's probably why you can't do it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Talking about it, just getting to like swing your weapon for 5 repeatedly once this is in is like pretty good. So yeah, maybe that's why you can't do this. That's reasonable. I see what you've done here.
Okay, then let's talk about the next rare here. It will be our last rare for the Runeblades. It is Sigil of the Arknight. So this is a blue pitch, zero cost, 2 block, and it says go again. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. When this leaves the arena, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an action card, put it into your hand.
I don't know if I like this card. You're like spending a card for like a chance to get a card back. If it hit all the time, I still don't know if it's fantastic. It does make an aura to turn on your weapon, so it's not like it's literally doing nothing, but it's like a little bit low impact. It does potentially let you bank resources to your next turn, which is pretty powerful, but I think it coming at the start of your turn and being like a maybe you get a card makes it pretty hard to plan around. So I need to see this card in play, but overall, like I'm not sure about this card. I guess it is a blue with go again, so you can potentially use it as like a way to convert your hand if you're taking arcane damage, and maybe that just makes it good enough. But it doesn't read as especially powerful. I think there will be like spots where it's insane, but I think overall it's like
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you just said. Not impressed with this card.
it is a rare, which makes me think that like maybe this plays better than I think it does, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
Maybe it was too good if it was a common and it showed up too often, where you can have like where one of your turns is gonna go like play sigil pass, and then you try to get like a severed card hand and go off,
Maybe.
and then they're like, let's not do this. We're gonna make it a rare so people only get like one or two in their deck.
Yeah, I could maybe see that. I'm not sure about this card. This is one that like I think will make more sense as you play with it and see it in play. So pay attention to this card.
Yeah,
It's a little bit weird. I'm not confident, but my initial impression is it seems fine. But I think the flexibility of like having a blue that you can play out is pretty real in this format because there are wizards. But outside of that, I don't know. It's okay.
okay, that's fair. Okay, then we're gonna move on to the commons next. We are missing like 6 cards, I think, in between this, but we'll talk about what is released so far. And the first card is Hit the High Notes. This is a Runeblade attack action, blocked for 3 and costs 1 to play. The red one attacks for 4, and it reads, if you've played or created an aura this turn, it gets +2. Wow.
Yeah, so if you do the thing, which is playing or creating an aura, this is a 1 for 6 that blocks 3, which is obviously fantastic and above rate. Your usual rate's like a 1 for 5 that blocks 3 or critical strike is usually just good enough to be a good limited card. This is potentially a 1 for 6, which is super efficient. I think my initial read is that this slots in very well with Aurora because her hero power costs 2, so you can do something like make an embodiment of lightning, attack with this for 6, go again, or attack with this for 6, make an embodiment of lightning, and bank the embodiment till next turn. And all of that seems really good to me. This might be workable in Florian as well, but I think you need to have stuff that curves out with it. So like if you're just pitching a whole blue to play this, it's not really enough on its own because like even if you turn it on with like your gloves, Runehold release, like you're doing some work for a 1 for 6, and there's like we just talked about some 3 for 7s, and like there's like a bunch of earth 3 for 7s. So you do need it's very efficient, but you need a way to spend those resources for it to be worth it. And I think in Florian you might lean towards doing the 3 for 7s unless you specifically have cards that like curve out with this.
That makes sense. This card is kind of insane with the arm piece, the Runehold release, right? It's just like
Yeah.
it does 7 damage for 1 pitch. That's
Yeah. Notably, if you have the arm piece and the chest piece, you can make a rune chant token, crack the chest piece, make that rune chant into a resource, and then just play this as a 1 card 6, which is really powerful. That is like one thing that I do think is very good about this card.
wow, a 1 card 6 unlimited. That's really not fair.
Yeah. You have to use 2 equipment for it, but I mean, still, that can swing games, and if Florian's hero power is on, it's like a 1 card 7, so yeah, very good.
Fair enough. Okay, next card is Hocus Pocus. This is also an attack. It blocks for 3, but this one is a 0 cost, and it says when this attacks, create a rune chant token. Wow, this is also solid.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that 0 for 4 stat line. The rune chant is like a little bit delayed, but it's evasive, which is very good. And then if Florian's text is on, it's a 0 for 5. I think Hocus Pocus is pretty good. Again, I think it might be better in Aurora because she can give this go again easier with embodiments of lightning. But maybe just as like a one card play in Florian, I could still see this being okay. It depends how much you want to do one card plays versus two card plays. I'm not quite sure about that just yet.
That's fair. To me, the blue one is something that's like really interesting to me because like when you attack with the blue Hocus Pocus, it presents one which is really annoying and you don't really want to block it, and then it also prevents the one rune chant. So you get these like really annoying one in one scenarios, and because it's a blue, you naturally pitch it, and these one in one scenarios are very annoying late game. So I think the blue Hocus Pocus is where I'm gonna be is the version of the card that I'm going to be the most interested in, actually.
Yeah, I think the blue does seem very solid for that reason. And yeah, the rune chance in the end game seems really good. So that makes sense.
Fair enough. Okay, next card is a card that I really loved when this got first printed. Or not first printed, but when I was playing with this card, and it's Meet and Greet. So this is a reprint from Crucible, I think. And this is a one cost for 4 attack action that blocks for 3. And this card reads, when this hits, create a rune chant token. And then it also says, if you've dealt arcane damage to an opposing hero this turn, this gets go again. And that's typically, if a rune chant pops, then this card has go again. So it's a 1 for 4 go again. On hit, make a rune chant.
This is really powerful. There are ways to stop arcane. So if you're like relying on one rune chant, especially if they have the macro up, be careful. They can prevent that arcane damage. And then if you're relying on this to play a bunch more cards, like that's maybe not a good idea. But you can pretty easily lead with the arcane and like a different attack and then go into meet and greet, and it's very hard to stop. If you have enough rune chance, it's pretty impossible to stop as well. And yeah, 1 for 4 go again with an on hit to get a rune chant, or in the case of Florian, 2 rune chants is really, really good rate. I think that if you were like able to start the turn with multiple rune chants, the like meet and greet on hit you get a rune chant and you get the Rotwood Reaper seems like pretty powerful, but I don't know how often that will come up. Like I don't know if it's like necessarily Flitz and Florian, but if you can pull it off, it seems really good. And in Aurora, I think the cheap cards are really easy to make work.
Oh, yeah. In Aurora, this card seems amazing. It's like, it's kind of really easy to just slot this in the middle of your turn, too.
Yeah, and I think this is like a card that makes the gloves better because you can get the arcane damage to turn this on. So you can potentially like pop the gloves, do lightning surge or something from Arsenal that already has go again, and then your opponent's like, okay, I'm not going to stop the stupid arcane damage, and then your meet and greets online, and they're like, darn. And I guess that's something also to be aware of is if your opponent's popping their gloves, maybe they have meet and greet.
Man, we've been talking about the gloves a lot. It seems pretty good in this set.
Yes, I think the gloves are very good and very synergistic. I think they do more than they seem that they do on first glance.
That makes sense. Okay, then we're going to move right on and talk about the next attack action. It's going to be called Rune Rager Swarm. It costs 0 attacks for 3, blocks for 3, and it says if you played or created an aura this turn, this gets go again.
I really like this card. It's just like always worth 3 on offense or defense. It does a lot of the stuff we were talking about with like the come to fight card where you can extend your turn or you can use it to block for 3, but it costs 0. So I think I might actually like overall like Rune Rager Swarm more than that Condemned to Slaughter, at least in limited. This card just seems really good in both heroes, honestly. Like Florian, you find a way to make the rune chance. Again, gloves come to mind, and you can just potentially present an extra 3 go again, like play a head job. And on turns where you want to do more blocking, you can block 3. And kind of all of that applies to Aurora. You make an embodiment of lightning, this gets go again. So like you could do like make an embodiment of lightning, play a different attack, it gets go again from the embodiment, play this for 3 go again. It's just very easy to convert this card, and the red one of this seems great.
That makes sense. I guess the one thing that I guess it's a little bit worse is if you pair it with an embodiment of Earth. The only thing is there isn't that many ways to make embodiment of Earths in the set so far. So, unless some new card gets spoiled that easily makes embodiment of Earths, I don't think that's gonna be that relevant.
Yeah, it's mostly like the sigil. Like if you have a sigil in play, start a turn it breaks, you get an embodiment.
Yeah, but that's not really like a good way. The only card that was really interesting that makes embodiment of Earth was the Earth form that was like on hit makes an embodiment of Earth, but everything
Yeah.
else is like kind of hard to make the embodiment of Earth. So yeah, if you're probably not going to be relying on that part of the game.
Yeah, yeah. But there's enough other ways to make auras that I think that this is still very good. And I guess like Rune Rager Swarm, I guess like this is a card that likes that Malefic incantation, because if you play Malefic incantation, that gives this go again, and then you get the rune chant out of it right away, and that seems pretty decent. So there's some synergies for sure.
And let's move on and talk about the Runeblade action auras now. It's going to be called Arcane Cussing, cost 1, blocks for 2. This card reads, Go again. When you deal or are dealt damage, destroy this. When this leaves the arena during your turn, create 3 Runechant tokens.
Yeah. So notably, on its face, you need to play this and then deal arcane damage, or sorry, deal some kind of damage to get the rune chance right away. And if you don't and you go to your opponent's turn and this is still on the board, if you take damage, it will go away and you don't get any rune chance, which is a little bit painful. However, I think this card's really, really good in Florian. I don't know how like many of them you want. You probably don't want a ton of them, but pairing this with the chess piece is really good because the chess piece you can just sacrifice this and it is your turn, so you get the 3 rune chance right away. And with Florian's text, you get 4 rune chance. So this is kind of like a 0 for 4 rune chance with the chess piece when Florian's online, which is pretty crazy. And it has synergy with all the sacrifice and aura stuff that we've been talking about. So if you have like the Splintering Deadwood and this, you can sacrifice it to Splintering Deadwood, you get the rune chant from Splintering Deadwood, you get the rune chants from this, and you're kind of like, you're not giving up anything. In fact, you're like getting stuff out of it. So I think Arcane Cussing is very good, but you need the cards to go with it. Chess Piece being probably the best card for it, but there is another card that goes very well with this. It's actually the next card.
Sure. Then you want to talk about the next card as well right now?
Yeah, so Deadwood Dirge. This is a Runeblade action that costs 0, blocks for 2, and at red it says destroy an aura you control. If you do, create 3 rune chant tokens, and it has go again. So notably, you can play Arcane Cussing, you can play Deadwood Dirge, you can sacrifice the Arcane Cussing, and then you could swing Rotwood Reaper. So if Florian's text isn't online, this is already 6 rune chants and 4 off of 3 cards, so it's 3 card 10 with 6 of it being arcane, which is like an incredible play already, honestly. And then if Florian's Text is online, you get 4 from the Arcane Cussing, 4 from the Deadwood Dirge, and there's a 3 card 12. And you're dealing 8 Arcane, which is like pretty scary. And if you have something I've been seeing is like if you have like the gloves on board too, you can then pop the gloves for 2 and you just have like, here's 10 Arcane and 4 physical off of 3 cards. Like, what are you going to do about it? So I think that like these combinations of cards is like really, really good. And specifically, if you can turn on Florian's Text, it's like you can swing the game very, very quickly as Florian once his hero text is online. And these cards work super, super well together.
Yeah, no, that already sounds pretty amazing. But it is an A plus B combo. And if you don't have the red versions of these cards, it does seem significantly worse, right?
Yeah, I think so. The yellows are like a little interesting to me because you can maybe pitch them to Rotwood Reaper. I think the blues are pretty terrible though. Um, but yeah, I think mostly the reds have stood out to me. I noticed that like the blitz decks do have yellow arcane cussing in it though, and the more I think about it, the more it like kind of makes sense. You can pitch it if it's not great, and then it's there for your late game, and if Florian's text is online, it still gives you 3 rune chance. So I can sort of see it, but I think I still prefer the reds overall.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think Deadwood Dirge is you do need some synergy for this still because you need auras to sacrifice, but there's quite a few ways to make auras, and I think Deadwood Dirge is kind of like the better like standalone card. Like I'd play like more Deadwood Dirges. Like if I have Deadwood Dirges, it kind of supports the arcane cussings, but like I would play Deadwood Dirge on its own. I don't know if I would play arcane cussing on its own. Like probably not.
Yeah. So I guess. Oh, actually, you know what? Let's talk about the rest of the Runeblade cards because we don't have that many, and then I have a little bit of things that I want to say about Runeblades after that.
Sure.
So let's talk about the next card real quick. It is a reprint. It's called Oath of the Arknight. This is a reprint from Arcane Rising. So this card costs 2 to play. It blocks for 3, and it says your next Runeblade attack this turn gets +3, and it creates a rune chant token, and has go again. This card's great.
This card is good. I'm trying to figure out where it fits still. It not curving with Rotwood Reaper is like a little bit awkward in Florian. That doesn't mean that you can't play it. It just means that you need to maybe there's like a Florian deck that plays like this and meet and greets and hit the high notes, and that's like a package that goes together, or you can play like a more 3 for 7 focused Florian deck. I could see that being the case. Um, I do think this card is good, but I think that you need to just make sure you can use the resources, and the 2 is sometimes slightly awkward. You could probably play this in Aurora too. It pairs with the weapon, but you also kind of want to make Embodiment of Lightning. So it's an interesting card, but I think just make sure that it works with your curve, and then yeah, it should be good.
No, but this card just blocks for 3.
It does block for 3, but there's also a lot of arcane in this set. So
Yeah, you just play the red one because it blocks for 3, and when you can play it on in your hand, it's like kind of insane.
yeah, I think it's solid. I definitely think it's solid.
Yeah, I just like my 3 blocks. But I guess from what we've been reading so far, a lot of cards do have the 3 block value, at least in the Runeblade class cards.
Yeah, the attack actions in specific, like all the Runeblade attack actions have 3 block, and notably, I think it needing a Runeblade attack is a bit of a downside in this set, in the sense that like all the heroes I think are reasonably invested in their element. They need it to turn on, like as Verdance and Florian needed to turn on their hero ability. Verdance kind of also needs it for her weapon. Acilio needs it to turn on his weapon. He needs to play lightning cards, and then Aurora needs it for her weapon and her hero text. So I think you're like pretty incentivized to play elemental cards, and just it is like a bit awkward. It's nice that there's blocks for 3, so like you're never super stuck with it, but it is like a potentially a little bit awkward that it doesn't always work with. Like you can't play this into like a 3 for 7 Earth card.
That is true. That is true.
That is like a little bit of a downside with it, and I think it just depends like how many Runeblade cards we end up playing versus how many Elemental cards we end up playing. And this doesn't work with generics either. So
You're right. You're right. So I guess a good way to say it is like probably treat this card as like a 3 block first, and then if you can make its ability work, then think about that next. I think.
yeah, and it could be possible that like maybe there's like a super Runeblade heavy deck where you play like Oath of the Arknights, Rune Wurge, or Swarms, meet and greets, and hit the high notes, and that's just like a really solid plan. And I could see that as well, but I just think like be mindful that I think that you need to build around this card a little bit. Like you can't just. I think there will be decks that you slot this into that it won't be great, and there will be decks where it will be very solid, and it just kind of depends on which combinations of cards you have. But if you're like an Aurora deck with like 20 lightning cards, like you probably don't want this card.
Okay. Then the last card to talk about will be Sigil of Deadwood. This is it's only in blue pitch. It costs 0 to. This card only exists as a blue pitch. It costs 0 and it blocks for 2. And it reads Go again. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy this card. When this leaves the arena, create a rune chant token.
I actually like this card. I think this card has impressed me a lot more than I thought it would.
How have you been using it then?
So I guess I should say it impresses me in Florian. It turns on the weapon, and it turns it on for 2 turns. So you can potentially like play this, swing for 4. Your next turn, you get a rune chant, you swing for 4. So you kind of do like 4 into 5 off of 3 cards. 3 card 9 with your blue, which is reasonable. If you have his hero text, you get the 2 rune chants, and then it just synergizes with the destroy and aura stuff. So like, especially with his text online, you play this, you play Deadwood Dirge, you get 4 rune chants from Deadwood Dirge, you get 2 rune chants from this. I just think it being like a blue with go again, it just like does, and it still blocks for 2. It just kind of like does enough small things that I've liked this card more than I thought I would. I kind of read it and I was like, 0 for 1. Delayed 0 for 1. But I think between like caring about making auras, caring about destroying auras, your weapon caring about making auras, it's synergizing with Florian's text box, and then it's a 0 for 2 go again, which is actually above rate. I think all of that just like makes this like Not like a high pick, but like a solid glue piece.
You don't think this card's good in Aurora then, right?
I guess I haven't tried it, but it doesn't strike me as good as it doesn't strike me as being as good in Aurora, just because like, well, it doesn't work with the weapon, which I think is like a great floor for this card. Like it being good with Rotwood Reaper just makes it like very easy to play this card, whereas it's hard for me to imagine this being above rate in Aurora.
Okay. Yeah, so that was the last Runeblade card to talk about today. And I think my initial impressions about the Runeblade cards is that they're very synergistic. It feels like they're all builder rounds and they're all asking to get built around on. And I think the more you can do that, like the builder rounds, the better your deck's going to be. And not all the Runeblade cards work well with each other. They just work with specific Runeblade cards. So figuring out which cards pairs with which cards is going to be kind of important when you're drafting, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also going to matter for I think on a similar note, certain ones are going to pair better with certain heroes. So the Runeblade card pool is very interesting in that it's like very divided, and I think there's cards that are good in Florian, there's cards that are good in Aurora, there's cards that are good in both of them, there's cards that want other Runeblade cards, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's cards that want certain elemental cards, like sacrificing auras. There are elemental sigils. I haven't like totally, solved the format by any means. I don't think any of us have. So I wouldn't surprise me if there's some interplay with some of the elemental cards as well. So I do think there's a lot going on with the Runeblade card pool, and it's honestly very cool. I think the Runeblade card pool in particular is like one of the more interesting ones.
Okay. Do you want to move on to our next class, which is going to be the Wizards?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the Wizard card pool on its face is not as exciting as the Runeblade card pool, but I also think it's more exciting than a lot of people think it is. I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, we got 50 zaps. Whoop de doo. I think it's a little bit better than that, especially in the context of limited. There are a few interesting things to talk about. So I think we will move through this fairly quickly, but there is some differences between the cards, and I think that there is some stuff to think about here. So
Just to clarify, we will be talking about, I guess when we talk about the wizard cards, we'll be referencing Zap a bunch. Zap is just a zero cost that does three arcane damage as an action card. Scalding Rain will be 4 damage, and what's 5 damage?
Voltic Bolt, but I don't think we have Voltic Bolts in this set, really.
Okay, yeah, and 5 would be usually called a Voltic Bolt. So if you are going to be confused on why we're calling a card Zap, that's just the original card that did zero cost for 3 damage. And just wanted to clarify for anyone who's newer to the game that's listening.
Yeah, good shout. All right, so let's start with Ink-Lined Cloak. This is a wizard equipment chest. It blocks for 0, and it has an instant. It says, destroy this, gain a resource. Activate this only if you control an aura permanent with sigil in its name. So it is a little bit restrictive on when you can activate this. Notably, many of the auras trigger at the start of your turn. At the start of your action phase. And you do have priority during the start of your action phase. So if you have a sigil already in play at the start of your turn and it's about to break, you can activate this in response and get your resource at the very start of your turn, so long as you've kind of planned it out and identified that you need that.
This card's kind of interesting. I don't know how much you want to be playing with the sigils, so I guess it'll depend on that. What is your initial take on this card?
Yeah, I think if you can activate it, it is pretty strong. To me, I suspect it's a little bit more of an Acilio card, just because I think the sigils are like more obviously synergistic with Acilio. You can discard them with his hero ability to filter them and cycle a card, like draw a new card. But also, his weapon cares about you having a sigil in play, and if you have a sigil in play, it makes your weapon activation free. So I think that this card on its face seems like more of an Acilio card, but maybe Verdance will also have a use for sigils, or maybe there'll be builds of Verdance that do. But I think you can also just play Verdance without sigils, and I think like the no blocks in Verdance are like also a little bit more sketchy if you are kind of believing in Verdance being more controlling to get her hero power online and gaining life and all of that. So I'm not sure about this card in Verdance. I think in Acilia, though, you are going to be able to turn this on, and a chess piece that gives you a resource is very good, even if it is a little conditional.
Okay, then we'll move right on and talk about the next equipment. It's called Hold Focus. It's an arms piece. And this card reads, action, destroy this, amp 1, go again. Wow, simple, nice.
I think it's really good. Surge is a keyword in this set that's going to appear on a lot of cards, which basically is just like if the spell does more damage than its base, you get some sort of extra effect. That is on a lot of the wizard spells in the set, not all of them, but many of them. And I think just being able to use this to get a free damage, which is already good. It's hard to stop because it's arcane, and then you are potentially also getting the surge bonus, or making it hard for your opponent to stop the surge bonus is just like a lot of value in this card. I think this card's actually very, very good.
That's super fair. Yeah. Being able to trigger Surge was an issue in a lot of like what is it called? Chaos drafting or chaos seals. There are cards that we get to play with Surge in that format, and you almost never got to trigger it because we don't have an easy way to amp. And if these cards did have a good way to like amp, then a lot of these cards are going to be very, very powerful. So I think hold focus into figuring out which card you want to surge is going to be very important. And you don't want to be like just doing it just because your card has surge.
Yeah, and I think there are ways to interact with arcane damage, especially the macro and like a few sigils. Lightning has a bit of damage prevention, but like all in all, surge is or arcane damage is pretty hard to stop. So if you amp, especially if you like amp multiple times, like if you have amp 2, amp 3, it just becomes like at a certain point it becomes extremely hard for your opponent to really have enough ways to stop the amp to be able to stop you from getting the surge effect. I don't know exactly like where the breakpoint will be. I haven't played enough with the cards, but it does seem like the ways to prevent it are pretty limited. So amp 1 on its own might not be quite reliable surge, but if you start combining this with other amp effects, like I think there will be spots where you can kind of almost guarantee that you get the surge effect.
Okay, then let's move right on, and talk about our first wizard action rare. This one's called Chorus of the Amphitheater, and it costs 2, blocks for 2, and this reads deal 4 arcane damage to any target, and it also has instant, discard this. If an action or instant card you control would deal arcane damage this turn, instead it deals that much plus 1. So essentially it amps.
Notably, it applies it's not like the next action or instant. So if you are able to somehow do lots of instances of arcane, it would apply 1+1 to each of them. I think is the idea. Like that's sort of like the upside of this card is if you somehow played
Oh,
2 zaps, you would get +1 on both of the zaps. I don't know if I like this card. It blocks for 2, but maybe. Maybe. The 2 for 4 side is like not that exciting. It's kind of underrated. The instant effect is like kind of sweet, but you need to combine it with like multiple spells and then for it to really start getting value, and then it blocks for 2. Like if this blocked for 3, it'd be like, yeah, you slam the blue one. That's really, really easy to include. But it blocking for 2 is like maybe. I don't know. Maybe there's something here, but I'm a little skeptical of this card, in limited at least.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Interesting. This card's interesting. I am not going to write it off yet.
Yeah, I think that's wise. Like I wouldn't like write this card off, but like I think hmm, I think that don't just like see this card and be like, oh, it's a rare wizard card, therefore I should be playing it. Like I think you want like a reason to be playing this card, and you need to have like the right synergies for this card. And I don't at the moment I don't know exactly what those are, so I'm not sure about it. But like maybe there's something really sweet. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, let's just move on. I think this might be the like the unplayable rare in the set as well, right? Like it could even be in that slot.
It could be, yeah. It's a little hard to say, but we'll see.
Okay, then let's talk about the next card. It's called Glyph Overlay. It is a 1 cost wizard action that blocks for 3, and it says deal X plus 3 arcane damage to target hero, where X is the number of aura permanents you control with sigil in their name. With sigil in their name. Surge, if it deals more than 3 damage, gain 1 life. Then shuffle all aura permanents you control with sigil in its name into their owner's deck.
So notably, when you shuffle the sigils into your deck, you will get the effect of them because I believe all of the sigils read when this leaves the arena, do something. So basically, each of your sigils are worth a damage, and if you surge, you trigger all of your sigils and you gain a life. This card does a lot of things. I think it's hard to evaluate. I think a lot of people like see all the things they do and they're like, wow, this is insane. I think it's very easy to play this card and have it feel like it's doing a lot of things and it not be good enough though. Because like some of the sigils are like pretty below rate. So if you're playing like below rate cards and then you're like, wow, I get like an extra damage out of it, like that's not nothing. But also like those cards would have triggered on their own, right? Like they trigger at the start of your turn. Like, yes, you do like speed it up a little bit, but it's not like, wow, I'm getting two triggers. Like you're still only getting the one trigger out of your sigil. So even though you're adding one value to it, like this is a 1 for 3 as well. So be careful with this card. I think there are lines with it that are powerful, but I think that there are also lines with it that will feel cool and will be very bad.
That makes that makes a lot of sense. I guess as a note, this card is kind of good with the Auxilio's weapon Volzar because that means that you have a sigil in play, and that makes Volzar free. So if you've played like that sigil this turn, then that should cost 0. Volzar should cost 0 to amp. Then this card will almost definitely get the surge because it'll be like +2, even maybe +3, depending on how many lightning cards you played. And then if you get the surge ability, then you also gain the life. So is this card can easily be above rate in Auxilio, I think.
Yes, I think it can be above rate in Acilio, and I think in particular the lightning sigils are good with it because the lightning sigils kind of like double dip on it. Like you get +1 from Volzar for a lightning card, and you get +1 on glyph overlay, so you can do a lot of arcane damage all at once. And I think something to be conscious of in the set is that I think like sometimes you look at large amounts of arcane damage and you're like, but it's still below rate. Like I spent all these cards and I did like 8 arcane. But the thing is like 8 arcane's pretty hard to interact with and it can just kill people. So I think there's like a real value into it being hard to interact with. And also, if your turn is just like 8 arcane, gain a life, get some sigil effects, even though like maybe that was a 4 card hand and you're like that's a 4 card like 9, make an embodiment of lightning, like I don't know if that's good. Your opponent has to be able to do more than 9 damage with all 4 of their cards, and they might just be an earth hero that's like, I wanted to play a 3 for 7 and block for 6, but like I didn't get the block, so I'm just playing a 3 for 7, and then your 9 is actually just better than their 7. So I don't know like exactly what the premium is on arcane damage. I think it's something we'll need to play with, but I do think that arcane damage has a premium, especially into the earth heroes that maybe can't convert their hands, and then into the lightning heroes that have more go again, the arcane damage is like maybe a little less good. But you can also just kill them, right? Like you have an explosive turn, you get them down to 7, and then you're like, here's 9 arcane, and they're suddenly forced to pitch into their macro. Like I don't know. I think large amounts of arcane damage is you can't just evaluate it on rate, I guess, is what I would say.
Okay, then let's move on and talk about the next rare. It's called Pop the Bubble. It costs 0. It's a wizard action, blocks for 3, and it's a zap. It deals 3 damage. But it also has Surge. If it deals more than 3 damage to a hero, destroy an aura permanent they control.
I think when this is relevant, it can be very good. Destroying Embodiment of Lightning seems like the most obvious and premium one. Maybe you can like destroy like the Malefic incantation that we talked about earlier, the one that keeps making rune chants every time they play an attack action. There's some very good targets for Pop the Bubble. So yeah, card's pretty sweet. Do be careful that if you destroy your opponent's sigil, they do still get the effect of it. So popping the bubble on their sigil is not actually that good in most spots. Like maybe if they already have an embodiment of lightning and you give them another embodiment of lightning, that's kind of good. But yeah, just it's not always good to break their sigil. But against the other auras, yeah, pretty solid.
Yeah, that makes sense. If it pops in our like a rune chant, it's kind of sweet.
Yeah, yeah. It's easy to just get like a point of value out of this, and that's it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a solid zap. Then next card is going to be a rare. It's a sigil. It's a sigil temporal manipulation. It's a blue pitch that costs 0. It is a wizard instant aura, so this does not need go again. And it says at the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. When this leaves the arena, banish the top card of your deck. If it's a non-attack action card, you may play it this turn as though it were an instant.
So this is kind of like a Kano activation at the start of your turn. I think that if this hits, it is pretty powerful. The problem is it does need to hit, and you probably want it to hit on a red spell. I don't know if there's many ways to fix the top of your deck. I don't think there is. I haven't noticed it when I've been going through the set. So this is, in my mind, this is like either more of a constructed card or a card that you need to specifically kind of like pitch stack and know that you're going to be hitting a red. But I think if you do that, it's a very powerful effect. Getting to get like play an arcane damage spell, like that's like replacing your card. You're turning this into a red spell, and then you essentially get an action point out of it because you're playing it as an instant. So if you can pull this off, it's really good. But I also think most of the wizards in this set seem to want to play some amount of attack actions, so be careful with it, I guess.
I guess if in draft you might be able to put together like a multiple sigil deck with like a chorus of the amphitheater and like be able to play like multiple actions in one turn. So it might be like a draftable combo deck. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I could see that. Maybe if you have like two of these, you have multiple chorus of the amphitheaters, and then you're like a Kano deck that's just like all spells. Like maybe that is a way that you can play these decks, but you would need to be in that deck.
But then if you pitch stack it as well, you try and like arsenal a sigil, pitch stack another sigil, you play double sigil, make sure you draw like double chorus on that turn, and then all of your surges will definitely resolve on that turn. That's pretty cool. That's a cool combo deck if you can put it together.
Yeah, it's a matter of whether you can put it together and if the format is a speed that allows you to do that. But yeah, this card's really interesting. It's like super powerful. I think that this will almost certainly see constructed play somewhere at some point in time. I don't know if it'll be like a meta constructed deck, but like you can build around this and do some really powerful combos with it in constructed. And I think even in limited, it has some potential. It's interesting.
Yeah, if we start talking about constructed, I think we'll go too deep onto this card. So we will talk about that on a different day.
Also, notably, like glyph overlay with this card is like potentially kind of cool because you tuck it and then you get the effect right away, and you might have a way. Like if you pitched a blue to glyph overlay, you'll have two floating, so you might be able to like play more things off of it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think just like slamming this and playing glyph overlay is going to be a good play on average, but like there's going to be decks and spots where it like wins the game.
Okay, yeah. So this is like the build around card of the set is what it looks like.
Yeah, I think so. Or like a some kind of pitch stack card. One of the two. You either build around this or you pitch stack it, I think.
Fair enough. Okay, now we'll start talking about the commons for Wizard. So this is called Aether Quickening. This is a reprint. It costs 1, it deals 4 damage. It's a Scalding Rain, but it has Surge. If it deals more than 4, it'll get Go Again. So Go Again is kind of hard to come by in Wizards usually, and if you can give this card Go Again, being able to present a lot of arcanes usually really strong. But historically, giving this card more than 4 damage has been difficult, so well, it is, and it's also not guaranteed that it gets more than 4 damage. Like, even if you swing at this card for 5, it's not guaranteed that it will do 5. So you might not be able to play the card you wanted to play if they can somehow prevent it. I don't know about this card. What do you think?
I'm also not sure about it. I think I agree with a lot of things you said. The Scalding Rains in particular seem a little bit less obvious to me. Just in the sense that like I think Acilio can be kind of like this pitchless redline deck if you have like 0-cost lightning cards and 0-cost zaps, and then your sigil makes your weapon for free, and that seems pretty good to me. And like maybe there's like also a one cost version of the deck, but a lot of the one cost lightning cards don't have go again, so it's like a little bit tricky. I think you need to find ways to make the Scalding Rains work, whereas I think the zaps slot in like a little more naturally, at least my first look. And I think same thing for Verdance. Her weapon costs 3, So because of that, you can like use the weapon plus a zap to get 4 and threaten the surge and an embodiment of Earth when this is just like a 1 for 4 on its face. So I think that the Scalding Rains in general in this set are probably like a little lower priority, but there may be like an archetype of wizard that supports this, and there is a card coming up later that I think maybe pairs with Aether Quickening, and there might be a deck there, so we can talk about it when we get to that card. But keep an eye on this card. I think that like you don't want to just like slam this in a deck and it's suddenly good, but I think in the right setup it might be powerful.
So next card to talk about will be Arcane Twinning. This is a zap, and it also has an ability instant discard this amp one. It's like a modal card that's a zap or an amp one.
I think the blue one of this is pretty impressive, just like a blue block 3 that if you have extra cards, you can discard in an amp 1. The red is also fine. It's just like a 0 for 3 that's kind of modal. I don't know. I think this card's decent.
Yeah, it's just a zap with upside.
It's fine. I think you kind of want some number of zaps, and it lets you convert hands. The notably the amp 1 is always amp 1 regardless of pitch, so that's part of the reason I say the blue is like maybe the most utility.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving on.
Yep.
Then next one is Etching of Arcana. This is also a zap. But this one has a Surge. If it deals more than 3 damage, you may return an aura with sigil in its name from your graveyard to your hand.
This effect is super strong. Like you're going up a card, and many of the sigils are instants. I think maybe like all the sigils Acilio can play are instants. I'm not sure. Like I think all the wizard ones are instants that we've seen, and then the lightning ones are also instants. So even if you don't have an arsenal spot for this card, you can at least play the sigil. So yeah, I think that this is like if you have sigils in your deck, this card's really good. It's probably more of a Acilio card than a Verdance card because the sigils are more synergistic. But yeah, the effect's very powerful.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like if you can use Osilio's weapon to like buff this card, then they kind of like they all work together nicely.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of synergy there, and then you have the sigil on your next turn, and that's kind of like where the chess piece can come in with some of these Scalding Rains too, right? Like if you end your turn on a sigil, the sigil is about to pop, you get a resource, then you could play a Scalding Rain, and it might fix that problem of having the one cost that you can't spend, or alternatively, it could give you the one resource to activate your Volzar if you're not playing a sigil on that turn. So I think there's like quite a bit of synergy with all these like sigils and potential one costs in Acilio.
Okay, then the next card will be Exploding Aether. This is a 2-cost wizard action that blocks for 2, and this card reads Amp 3. Go again.
2 for 3 go again. Not exactly a great rate. You can combine it with the Scalding Rain, so you can do like a 3-card 7 and threaten the surge. How good is that? I'm not sure. But I do think that if you are playing like the Aether Quickening deck, this is probably the card you want to pair with it, because then you can potentially do like 3 for 7 Arcane Go again, and then maybe you can like follow it up with a Zap and then do 10 Arcane off of 4 cards, which is actually starting to sound pretty reasonable. So yeah, I'm curious how strong this is. I think when we play this up more, it will become clear, but this definitely seems like you're either in the Zap lane with like lots of 0 cost effects, or you're combining the Scalding Rains and the Surge effects with Exploding Ether.
Yeah, best be careful about playing too many of these effects though, because like these are technically under rate, and if your opponent's good at converting cards, it is gonna be hell to play these cards.
Yeah, I suspect that you'll want to be playing some attacks to be on rate, and then maybe you play like one of these as like a game closer kind of a thing. Also, notably, it blocks for 2, so yeah,
Yeah,
be careful.
that is an issue. Okay, we are missing one playset of a common. One cycle of a common. But we'll move right through that, and it's the next card will be called Overflow the Aether Well. This is a zap with Surge. If it deals more than 3 damage, you gain 2 resources. This card seems insane and constructed.
Yeah, like in Kano, the blue one on your Aether Wildfire turn, gross. In limited, I don't know what you can do with these 2 resources. So far, I haven't really found anything super compelling. I guess if you combine it with the Sigil of Temporal Manipulation, because then you kind of have like action points with it, like maybe that's good.
Yeah, no, this is a combo card. So like you're supposed to like do like a 7 card pitch stack with sigil temporal manipulation, and like you just kill them on that one turn by presenting like 24 damage after blocking for like 12 every turn.
Yeah, easy.
Easy,
Um,
easy.
yeah, I don't know. I think that this card is mostly just going to be a Zap Unlimited. You know what? I'll put a challenge out to our listeners. If you end up making this card work and do something really sweet, I want you to reach out to us some way, Patreon, Discord, social media, on Twitter, something like that, and tell us about it, because I think that sounds like a really cool story, and I want to know what this card can do in limited. But so far, I don't know. This mostly seems like a Zap Unlimited to me.
Yeah, in limited looks like that. So I'm excited for like week 8 of the format when people stop like picking this card too highly, and uh we really get to make a build around with this card.
Yeah.
So next card is pre oh my god, I'm gonna butcher this
Perennial.
name. Pernemio?
Perennial. Perennial.
Perennial. Okay. So it's called Perennial Aether Bloom, and it's a zap with Surge. If it surges, it puts if it surges, it puts it on the bottom of its owner's deck. Cool.
I think this card is potentially pretty good. Verdance like doesn't have a weapon and is a life gain deck, and her staff amps for 1. So this is like potentially kind of like a recursive weapon at the end of the game that you can use to close it if you're being threatened by fatigue. And I don't know if Acilio is prone to fatigue. I kind of imagine he would be, since he's like potentially discarding some cards to his hero ability. He's a wizard, so like if they gain enough life, they can maybe get out of range. I don't know. So yeah, this just seems like some good fatigue installation, and there's a reasonable number of ways to amp. So this seems decent. If fatigue doesn't matter, then this card bad.
Yeah, I think that's that. I think I'm in the same boat. As like it it's a little hard for me to imagine in this format that fatigue is going to be like a recurring theme,
Mhm.
and if fatigue isn't going to be a recurring theme, this card is not going to be worth a pick. But if it is a recurring theme, this card is going to be a very high pick, I think.
So it sort of depends. That's sort of why I say like maybe in Verdance I like this card a little more. Is like I don't know, like hypothetically Verdance wants to gain a bunch of life, so like maybe there's a very life gainy, blocky, fatiguey version of Verdance, and like having a couple of these can be your win con. I could see that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, next card, photon splicing. So this card is a Scalding Rain. It costs 1 DO4, and its second ability is instant. Discard this, amp 1. So this is just the 1 cost version of the card we just talked. We talked earlier called Arcane Twinning.
It's probably a little worse overall. We kind of talked about the Scalding Rains being a little bit more awkward than the Zaps, and we also see less of them than the Zaps. So I think that's maybe a hint that that the Zap playline is like more of the bread and butter, and the Scalding Rains like a little more situational. Yeah, I don't know if I like this card very much, especially because like theoretically you want to combine Exploding Aether, the Amp 3, with the Scalding Rain to get the Surge effect, but this doesn't have a Surge effect, so I'm not crazy about this card. The blue one's probably good though. Blue block 3, discard it to Amp 1, seems fine.
Yeah, same thing as the last card. Okay, then we'll move right on. We'll talk about Trailblazing Aether. This is a zap, but it has Surge. It gets Go again.
This card is sweet
Yeah, why is that?
because like Acilio can amp a bunch, and if you get to like I don't know, like play 3 lightning cards, activate Acilio, amp this for 3, come in for 6 arcane, play another zap, here's 3 more arcane. That just seems gross. Like I think in theory like the ceiling on this card is like pretty high.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think in the red line Acilio deck, right? Like that's what you're talking about here.
Yes. Yes. If you have like a super red line Acilio deck, that is super good. And that's sort of the one that I've theory crafted on the Patreon. I don't know how easy it will be to get that deck, since I think you need a lot of red 0 cost cards, and maybe you can't get enough of them. But that deck does seem pretty cool.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess in that case, like you don't actually have to have red lightning cards, right? It could be yellow ones still.
It could be yellows, but I imagine with most red line decks, like you need a pretty good density of reds, or the deck loses efficiency really, really fast. Like when your 4 for zeros become 3 for zeros, your deck is so much worse.
Yeah, it is significantly worse. It's like if like four cards in your deck is like yellows instead of reds, then you're gonna have this like issue of like needing to like gain that 4 points of damage somewhere else in your deck, and like it just never happens, right? In this game.
Like it can happen. It's just I don't know. Like every point of damage matters a lot in limited, and you're playing a deck that potentially has a lot of reach with arcane damage to close games early and make up for the fact that you have 18 life. And so just like every like extra point of value you have to earn before they're in lethal range makes your deck a fair bit worse. Is kind of how I would think about it. Like if you end up needing like an extra turn to kill them because you missed out on like 2 damage from playing 2 yellows, like your deck is much worse than if you had played 2 reds there. And like obviously it's draft, you're not going to be able to get the perfect version, but just like that is like one thing I kind of wonder maybe about both the lightning heroes is like they seem strong to me if you can get a lot of the reds. If you don't get the reds, it seems a little scarier. Whereas like the earth heroes feel very like okay, I play a 3 for 6 instead of my 3 for 7. This is fine. Like I'm playing a long game. I'm gonna be gaining life. My hero power takes over in the late game. This seems fine to me. Like, so I don't know. That's sort of my theory. Is like I think that the lightning heroes, like when they're good, may be very good, and the earth heroes are maybe like the floor is higher, but not quite as high a ceiling. Who knows though? That's pure speculation. I'm not that confident in that.
Yeah, no, I think I'm in the same kind of like evaluation there too. The Earth heroes seem to have like a higher floor, but the Lightning heroes definitely have a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I think that there's like multiple ways you can do like 16 to 20 damage on the lightning heroes, which is just game winning in limited in every format, honestly.
It's true. Okay, then the last wizard card to talk about will be Sigil Forethought, and it is a blue pitch zero cost wizard instant aura, and it says at the beginning of your action phase, destroy it. When it leaves the arena, create a ponder token.
I think this card's good in Acilio.
Yeah,
I don't know about Verdance. I kind of suspect it's not good in Verdance, but maybe just converting cards is important enough. I'm not sure. Like for like a wizard mirror, like maybe you want to board this in so that if you get stranded with cards, you can like maybe get a chance to convert it to your next turn. I don't know. Not sure about this in Verdance.
no, Yuki. This is clearly seated for the combo pitch stack Verdance deck. So like you're looking to play like multiple sigil temporal mass manipulation and sigil forethoughts, and you're gonna be playing overflow of the aether wells and chorus of the amphitheaters, and there's like a deck right there. You just and the rest is a 3 blocks, and you're just blocking with it. Yeah, and then you set up a 7 card hand at the end of the game.
That's so hard.
No, but like, have you seen what the Kano people are doing nowadays? Like, they're consistently setting up like 48 damage turns in CC.
Yeah, but it's like in order to have a 7 card hand, you would need to like play 3 of these with no blocks and pass, and then on your next turn, hold 4 cards, do nothing, pass, ponder 3 times, get to your turn. Like it's just like I don't know, man. The fact that there are ponder tokens that happen at the end of your turn seems really tough. If you drew a card at the start of your turn, like yeah, but like ponder token, like I don't know, that's pretty hard.
No, Yuki. So the ideal deck here is that you don't actually attack them with anything, so then they can't convert their hands every turn, which makes them less efficient because they still have to play blue.
Okay, Jay, you draft this deck and you tell me when you solved it. I feel like I'm gonna try and draft this deck, and then like a lightning hero is just gonna attack me for 15 2 turns in a row and be like, "What am I doing with my life?"
No. So this is where you need to have the block for 12 mentality.
But you're playing a bunch of no blocks in your deck because you have a bunch of sigils.
We figure this out later, okay? This is a week 10 deck, okay? This is a week 10 deck.
I think there is a deck there. I don't know if I believe this being a part of it. Maybe it accelerates your pitch deck. I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical of this card in that kind of a deck. I think it's good in Acilio. I think it's good in Acilio. I'm gonna stick with my guns. This is good in Acilio. I'm not sure it's good much else.
Okay, that's, you know what? That's probably the more responsible take to make.
If you do find some combo deck with this, I want to see it though, because that sounds really sweet. But that's a you project.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm gonna lose so many games to try and make this card work.
All right, so that's the wizard cards. I think there's quite a bit of replacement value here. I'm curious to see. I sort of suspect like the wizards may want to draft like elemental cards first and wizard cards later, but if there is an all wizard deck, which we've kind of hypothesized there might be, maybe you can just go heavy on wizard cards. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm curious like where you value taking these zaps because while there are better zaps and worse zaps, I think there are fairly interchangeable, and I'm not convinced that like the configuration of zaps that you have in your deck is really going to affect the power level that much, so much as like having the right number of zaps and right pitches of them is probably like the important part.
Wizards is always kind of difficult to pinpoint on like when you want to start picking cards and like which cards are actually good or bad. That's just gonna have to come by after we play with the set more. And I think the best thing to do will be like wait for our How to Draft series. It'll be out after the set releases, but like by that point we should have a better grasp of which cards are good and like what we're trying to do with each of the heroes. So we'll have to wait for that.
All right, you want to go through the generics? I don't think there's a ton to discuss with them, but there's a few cards we can talk about it.
Sure. Let's start with the equipments. I'm just going to talk them as a cycle. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a cycle. We only have two of them released so far, but Bruised Leather and Runaways is going to be the ability. They all have the same ability. It's instant. Destroy this. Prevent the next one damage that'll be dealt to you this turn. Activate this only if you have been dealt damage this turn.
Yeah, so we saw this in Tales of Aria. It was okay.
No, it was not okay, Yuki. It was awful.
It was pretty bad. I think it's a fair bit better in this set because the lightning heroes want to go again, and then the earth heroes we have Florian who has rune chance, so he does multiple instances of damage.
No, 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 no. Remember, last time we had Briar, who had Rosetta Thorn that just always did two sources of damage, and it wasn't good. So how can this cycle be good in this set, even if there are still rune chants? Like we already had a set with rune chants, like, and this card was just like close to unplayable in that format.
I don't know. It's probably not like your go-to, but I think that these are better than they seem. Like, I
Really?
think that these are better in this format than Runaways were in Tales of Aria because every class does arcane damage and you can't stop it, and they still prevent one damage. And there's no like the other problem with like Tales of Aria is like when you played against Oldhim, the card was just dead. It didn't do anything ever. Whereas like there's no deck like that. Like even Verdance, she doesn't really have go again, but she'll start gaining life and like I don't know, she'll play like a Findle's Fighting Spirit and like do physical and ping you, and then you get a damage prevention out of this. So I think you're going to be able to convert this for one life, which is like not fantastic, but I think it's fine. I
Okay.
think like Runaways were like quite bad in Tales of Aria, and I think they're better, relatively better in this set. But I imagine like I think in most places you'll like want the class stuff, but I also think the competition is like not quite as stiff. Like I don't know. In some cases, like let me put it this way: if you're Verdance, you could play Inclined Cloak to have like gain one if you have a Sigil in play, or you could just have Bruised Leather that prevents the damage and is going to be one life over the course of the game. Like I think Bruised Leather might just be better in that deck. So yeah, it's going to depend on like what they're competing with. Like clearly the boots are probably like Runaways is probably worse than the Earth boots that prevent two if you can get them online. But like I think that these are better than they were in Tails. They're not
Mm,
premium, but I think they're okay.
I have my doubts. I am very doubtful. It's like when I was playing with the Runaways and Tails, I was like, okay, this card's fine. People are complaining too much, and then it just like kept on feeling worse and worse and worse to the point where it was like, even if I see this like 10th pick, I sometimes pass it up because like there's usually something slightly better to like find later than this card. But I guess you are right. It is less dead in than it was in Tails because all the heroes should theoretically have more than one attack.
I also just think so the lightning heroes, there's like the lightning boots is Twinkle Toes. It's a instant destroy this, prevent 2 damage that would be dealt this turn. Activate this only if you played an instant card this turn. Well, you need to have an instant that you want to play on your opponent's turn. I can easily imagine having, especially an Aurora deck, that just can never turn this on in a reasonable way. Like, what if you just like don't have sigils in your deck? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, play your like 0 for 3 that doesn't do anything because it's your opponent's turn, and then prevent 2? Like, that sounds bad. I'd rather just have runaways. So like, I don't know. Like, it depends. Like, maybe there's like other boosts that are better, but like, I think there's just going to be spots where just like this being one value for free is going to be pretty solid. I think as Cilio, you probably want Twinkle Toes, but I think in like Aurora, like it's not clear to me. Maybe there's like some decks that want Twinkle Toes, but in some decks, like I think it's just like worse.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Let's just say you didn't sell me on this card. I just like always remember that for these abilities, the first time you want to use that you can use it, you should probably use it. There might be some
Yeah,
exceptions, but like if you ever bank this card, you can imagine that you will lose a game with runaways or bruised leather is still up, and it's gonna happen more than once. And I can already see this happening is I'm gonna use runaways on the first instance that I can, and then lose to some wizard surge that like I needed to like prevent the second surge with runaways and lose the game that way as well. So I don't know if it's I can already see if I play with this card, it's gonna feel bad no matter what happens.
I can't wait to have like Runaways and JB missing equipment and then beat him because I have Runaways.
Yeah, that could happen. That could happen. I'm gonna pass you runaways on the 15th pick, and then you're gonna beat me with that runaways. Yeah, yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
That's gonna happen. Uh,
Yeah, Jay and I have these discussions a lot. I think we're like closer than it sounds. I don't think these are amazing, but I think they are. I think they are a fair bit better than Entails. I'm standing by it.
okay, that's fair.
You can
That's
call
fair.
me. We'll revisit this one. You can tell me if I'm wrong later. Well, viewers, if we don't talk about this later, listeners, you gotta remind us to rehash this. Who was right about the Runaways cycle if it is a full cycle?
Yeah, it'll be interesting talking about this cycle later too. Okay, then let's talk about the rare generics. So this cycle, is this what it's called? It's gonna be kind of hard to talk about. I'm just gonna name all three of the cards. So we have Hand Behind the Pen, we have Smash Up, and Tongue Tied. They're all red pitches, but the difference on these cards is that the three cost attacks for 7, two cost attack for 6, one cost attack for 5. They all block for 2, and they all have the same text. And that reads: When this hits a hero, turn a card
No,
in
they
their
don't have
arsenal
the
face
same
up.
text.
Huh?
They don't have the same text.
They don't have the same text.
They kind of do. They basically are all like conditional command and conquers where when it hits, you turn a card in their arsenal face up, but the type of card that it destroys is different. So let's just go through them one by one. So Hand Behind the Pen is the 2 for 6. If you hit, you turn their arsenal face up, and if it's a non-attack action, you banish it.
Oh, it banishes it as well.
Yeah, it seems okay.
Yeah.
It's still like a red 2 for 6. It's not an element card. It's not like a Runeblade card for the Runeblades. I'm not. The generics seem like slightly more awkward in this set because it does seem synergistic, but it's still a fact-finding mission with upside.
What's really funny though is that like if you hit with this card and you banish an Earth card and turn on their hero ability,
Yeah, that is potentially a little awkward.
but I don't think that's gonna happen that often.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, then what does Smash Up do, which is the one cost?
It's the 1 for 5, and it banishes attack action cards from their arsenal. I kind of suspect this is the best effect, at least. All the stat lines are pretty good. 1 for 5 is a reasonable stat line. I think attack action is like the one you're going to hit the most often. I think there's going to be some decks that don't really play that many non-attack actions, even though they also will play some.
No, because the Wizards is gonna have a lot of like zaps, like the red zaps in their
Maybe.
arsenal. Or like
Maybe.
imagine a wizard that's like trying to set up like the combo deck. Like they're definitely gonna like Arsenal a glyph or something like
Yeah,
that.
okay, okay. And behind the pen, very good against the combo deck. I think it's fine. Yeah,
It's
these
fair.
these two are the best ones. The attack and the non-attack are the best ones. I suspect the attack is online slightly more, but these are definitely the best ones.
Mhm.
Then Tongue Tied is a 3 for 7, and it banishes instant cards from their arsenal. I suspect this is kind of bad because I feel like a lot of the instants are sigils, and then you can just play it in response. There's going to be some instants that you can't play though, and in those spots it will be pretty backbreaking. Like if they have your next lightning, I can't remember what it does. Your next lightning attack gets +3. No, your next action card this you play this turn with cost 1 or less gets +3. If you have that in your arsenal, like yeah, you're pretty sad. But overall, I'm not sure about this just because a lot of the instants are sigils.
My initial take on this card, like the tongue tied, the 3 cost that banishes the instance, is a constructed seeded card. It's like it's probably 4 constructed to try and beat some decks that wants to arsenal too many instants.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think in limited, this is like largely a 3 for 7.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah, it's still fine. Like all these cards still have good stat lines, so they're not bad. It's just I think that the CNC effects are like I don't know. Well, we'll have to see. We'll keep an eye on them. They may when they're relevant, they'll be really good, but they are a little conditional, and it's tough that you don't know if they're relevant when you play the card, but your opponent does. But I guess you're never like sacrificing rate, so maybe it's just fine.
Yeah, yeah, I think they're gonna be good. It's just
Yeah.
I feel like the games where this card actually banishes a card, you're gonna win like by a bigger margin, and if it doesn't banish a
Yes.
card, it could lose you the game. Like
Yes.
it's gonna feel like it swings a lot harder than it actually does.
Yes, I think I agree with all of that.
Okay. Then the next rare generic is called Count Your Blessings. This is a 2 cost generic instant, and this card reads gain X life, where X is 3 plus the number of Count Your Blessings in your graveyard. I am so excited for this card.
Of course you would be. I yeah, so in limited this is definitely like I don't this type of card has a name. You see them in Magic where you just like want to collect a bunch of this same card where if you have like enough count the blessings theoretically you get paid off. Is that good? I'm not sure.
Okay. So let's think of it this way, okay? So how many Count the Blessings in your graveyard do you need to make this card good? So like if you're getting like 6 life with Count the Blessing, is that pretty good?
It's pretty good, but the 5 life was like okay, but like the 4 and 3 were pretty bad.
So that means if you played Count the Blessing with 4 cards, it's really good. And 5 cards is really, really good. So like if you have like 9 in your deck, and if you can play all of them, then like you mitigate the first 2 with the last 2, and it becomes a pretty good card, right?
Yeah, but the blues and yellows have even a higher threshold to be good, and you have to play them. It's not like you can block with the card to get it. It's like if this card blocked too, I could see it. But this card doesn't even block. And then there's also the earth instant that gains you life. That's the other thing. There's also just the earth instant that if your hero ability is online, you just gain 5 life. It's a 2 for 5 at red. And I'm like, maybe you just play Fertile Ground if you want this effect. It's also an earth card. I don't know.
Okay, do you want to hear my take?
Okay.
This is actually an Acilio Count Your Blessing deck. So you play the yellow and blue ones, and you just discard it to Acilio's ability. You can do that, right?
You can. They are instants. That's true.
Yeah, and then you start playing the red ones, and you start getting like 6 to 7 life, and then you just out fatigue your opponent with Acilio.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you can out fatigue people, but maybe this can be part of the combo deck where you sit there and gain life and then combo finish. You don't really have a weapon.
Yeah, you don't have a weapon. I'm so sad that we don't have a weapon.
Like Verdance can do like the Staff of Verdant shoots and then like loop Perennial Aether Bloom theoretically, but like Acilio needs lightning cards to do that. So it's a little like I don't know. You need some kind of win con if you're doing that in Acilio. But yes, discarding them to Acilio if you have like 9 of them does seem maybe good. I don't know. This deck seems very hard to draft, but if you do and it's good, it would be very sweet.
Oh man, I am so excited to talk about this deck I put it together. And you know I'm gonna put it together someday.
Yeah, this is a GUA deck for sure. I'll let you do the work, and if it's busted, you tell me, and I'll draft it at Worlds.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited to let you in on the world secret. It's gonna be like a force count your blessings if you open the red one or something.
You know what's tough though? These cards are rare.
Oh, it's a rare no.
I'm not sure about this, Jay, but maybe.
Wait, hear me out. This is gonna be a constructed Acilio deck.
Oh my god.
You can definitely play 9 count your blessings.
You can definitely play 9 count your blessings.
Okay, we will talk about that in a different episode if we ever do. And we're gonna talk about the next card. It's gonna be Sigil of Cycles. This is a blue pitch 0 cost generic action aura. It blocks for 2 and has go again. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. When this leaves the arena, discard a card, then draw a card.
I'm not sure this card is good, but I will say that if you have no cards in hand, you do just draw a card.
Oh,
How good is that? I don't know, because you're still kind of just like paying a card to get a card later, so you need to get some benefit out of the aura side of it. But like, that is something about this card, but it doesn't strike me as super strong. I don't know.
yeah, this is like a synergy B. Like it's a synergy okay card.
Like maybe this is like good with like glyph overlay where like you play out all your sigils, you do all your stuff, you tuck this, and then you don't have any cards to discard, and you draw a card, and you're like, I did it.
This has to be like an easier combo with like Deadwood Dirge, right? Where you get to like destroy your aura and then you make 3 rune chants and you like draw a card, and if it's like pitchable to your weapon, you swing the weapon. If not, you just arsenal it.
Yeah, okay. Sigil of Cycles plus Deadwood Dirge is fine.
Yeah, it's fine. This card's fine.
Yeah, you need the right things for it, and then it might be okay.
Yeah, you need to put it together with things, but once you do, it's okay.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, let's just move on and talk about an amazing card. It's got Fyandel's Fighting Spirit. This card still sees constructed plays sometimes. Not in Zen format, but before Zen format, this card definitely saw a bunch of play. And this is a 3 cost for 7. The blocks for 2, but it says when this attacks or defends, if you have less life than an opposing hero, gain 1 life.
Yeah, card's pretty generically good. I think it is obviously the most powerful in Verdance, where once your hero power is online, you will ping somebody. Notably, Verdance's hero text says you need to gain life on your turn, so you cannot block with this and ping them for 1. You can block with it and gain a life, but you don't get the ping. Outside of Verdance, how good is this card? Probably still pretty decent at red, but it depends how synergy driven the set is. Like this is just like a good like quality card, but it's not very synergistic in the other heroes. And I guess it depends like how synergy versus like rad card quality the set is. But yeah, it's a very classic, very powerful card, especially at red.
Yes. I think the blue one's good too. Just like being able to go like pitch stack, attack with Fighting Spirit for 5, gain a life is so real.
Yeah. And also just like sometimes blocking breakpoints or like you block like Aurora Sword is like 2 go again and you can block for 2 go again, but then you gain a life, so you kind of got to like block 3 on something that's normally only lets you block 2. It's just pretty solid.
Card's a good generic. Okay, then we'll move on. And actually, before we move on, talking about Fyandel's Fighting Spirit, this got a rarity shift down to common.
So you can now play it in commoner.
Oh, that's actually kind of funny. Okay.
Also, yeah, this card will be appearing quite a bit in packs. Yeah, seems like a solid card. I'm curious to see if in sealed, like you just like slam the red ones into your deck. I could see that being the case. I could also see that not being the case though. Like maybe if you have a super synergistic Acilio deck or something, like this just doesn't have a place. I don't know.
It's kind of hard to tell, but the red one's gonna be good. Like you can't go wrong playing the red one.
Yeah, that's sort of my gut feeling as well. But yeah, I'll be curious to see.
And then The last comment to talk about to wrap up the episode is called Sigil of Fyandal. The sigil is a blue pitch, zero cost, generic action aura, and it blocks for 2. This card reads, go again at the beginning reaction phase to destroy it. When it leaves the arena, you gain a life.
Eh.
Wow, this card kind of bad.
Yeah. I guess in Verdance you get like 2 value out of it. I don't know. Is that
Oh,
good? Not.
no, I don't think
It's
so.
okay. Like 0 for 2 go again at blue is like okay, but I don't know. This card strikes me as just like a filler blue.
Yeah, it looks like a filler blue. It blocks for 2. It like if you can make a lot of embodiment of Earth, it's like fine.
Yeah, and like it does let you do the like I can convert the cards in my hand for something if I take a bunch of arcane and I get stranded with them. Like maybe you like I don't know. I could see sideboarding this in if you're against like a super arcane heavy deck, but like I don't even know if you're gonna know that you're against a super arcane heavy deck necessarily. So
Yeah,
maybe if you scout and you see they're super arcane heavy and they're not playing attack actions, you can side out one of your blues for Sigil of Fyendal.
yeah. I this is a card that's definitely gonna be like, yo, look at my deck. I'm playing like 2 of these, and I have all of these synergies. And then you look at it and you're just like, wow, that's like kind of okay.
Yeah, I guess you can sacrifice this to gain a life. That doesn't sound good either. Yeah, I think this card's just okay.
It's a filler card.
Yeah, it's a filler card. It's fine,
Okay.
sort of.
Okay, so that's we kind of went through almost every card in the set. That's at least all the ones that have been spoiled so far. Yeah, I think anything you want to say before you want to wrap this up?
I'm pretty excited for this set. It seems very synergy driven, which is generally the sets that you and I tend to prefer, I think. And it looks like there's gonna be like multiple ways to draft some, if not all of these heroes, which is usually something that I think creates a lot of depth and is good for competitive play, but also gives the format a lot of replayability for people that like drafting a lot, like us, because you get to try out all the different archetypes. And I'm kind of excited that we've been talking about all these like weird, janky corner cases, even just from the set reveal. I don't know if we've done this very much with Flesh and Blood sets. I don't think so. So that's got me pretty excited for this set.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I feel like the element cards are a little bit more like streamlined and pretty simple, but the class cards in the set seem very synergy focused. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to draft the set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also interesting that like a lot of the element cards want more element cards, and then I don't know if the class cards also seem to kind of pair with class cards. So I don't know. I'm curious if you'll have like an almost all element version of a hero and an almost all class card version of a hero and a mix, or if most will be a mix. So I'm curious to see how it develops. There's like multiple possibilities. I don't know what's going to be good. We'll see. We'll see. All right. Anyways, I think we can wrap this up. We've been going on for long enough. Thank you to all of our listeners and all of our patrons. We really, really appreciate all of you. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach out to us on our Patreon Discord, or you can find us on social media. Jay is at UedaJ over on Twitter, and I'm at Yukili Bender also over on Twitter. You can also email us directly at onthebobble@gmail.com. Hopefully, this is a good start for all of you heading to Tampa, and if not, then for all of you going to pre-release, we will be doing our regular pre-release primer after I've played with the cards in Tampa, and we'll be able to give you some additional insights. But yeah, this should hopefully give you a good starting point. So thanks for listening. Best of luck to you at your world premiere or pre-release events, and we'll see you next week.